Hello, YouTube. So we're in the midst of Halloween, Halloween time, right? This past weekend, I'm sure a lot of people went out in costume. I know I did. I was Princess Leia. Um, I and so in the spirit of Halloween, I wanted to do a few videos talking about horror um, because I love Halloween very much. It's my favorite holiday, um, and I love horror as a genre, as an idea. I think horror is kind of the bastard child of literature and cinema, uh, and and in some sense, these handful of videos that I'm beginning to record right now are a way of almost I want to say a defense of horror, um, and also an analysis of it and why I think it's valuable. Um, and this first video is going to be um, something of a defense of what's sometimes referred to as torture porn or horror that's all about extreme physical situations, um, and that are difficult to watch, right? Um, and I think it would be fair to say that, sure, this is trashy. Um, we can think of films like Hostel or something like that. Saw, maybe. Um, the Human Centipede probably falls into this category. For a much more artistic and interesting film, I'd point to something like Martyrs, which was a great film, I thought. A little ham-fisted in on the philosophical side, but still, I think a great film. Um, and I think that uh, there is value in this, um, and it's a sort of existential value, um, and that is that watching something like this entails what could be called an element of the joust, right, between the viewer and the film. Um, it contains a moment of struggle with your senses. Um, People would watch a film like Antichrist, for instance, by Lars von Trier. Is a very disturbing film for very physical reasons. There's very extreme physical violence in the film, and it's very difficult to watch. Um, and I think that Antichrist happens to be, I think, a very well done film. Um, so it's the allegation of trashiness might be easily cast aside in this case. Um, but there's a dimension of psychological warfare that happens between the viewer and the film. Um, we sit down, we turn off the lights. It's Watching something like that is a very antisocial experience, I think. It's in some sense just you in the film, and you find out what you're made of, right? Um, the film assaults you with disturbing imagery, and you withstand it, and come out the other side. Um, and I think that this experience of film is a very personal experience. I think it's a very existential experience, and I think it's a very valuable experience. Um, I think it's and this goes beyond. You know, I'm not trying to fetishize violence when I say something like this, um, but I think that it would be similar to, if you can think of the film Rocky, right? Um, a lot of that film deals with, or a lot of the heroism of that film um, deals with Rocky's ability to take it. You know, there's in Rocky Balboa, he has that great, if cheesy, but I still think great line where he says, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And that's sort of the spirit of Rocky, right? That's the spirit of of what makes that character and what makes that series so endearing, right? He withstands this extreme physical and like violence, and he can keep pushing forward. He can keep moving. When all has failed him in this moment of great catastrophe, he can push forward, and he has the heart to keep moving. And so this is what's great, I think, or this is what's harrowing. This is what's heroic about Rocky as a character. And I think that there's an element of this in watching a film that contains really extreme physical violence. And some people will say that, like, there's a tendency to be a lack of, characters that you care about or something like that in these films. But I don't think it's about characters. I think it's about very strictly the relationship between the viewer and the film. And it's the film putting the viewer through an ordeal to see what we're made of and to come out the other side. That might sound romantic, but I think all horror has to do with this. Perhaps not all horror, but I think much horror has to do with this. And putting aside the issue of torture porn, this is what Paranormal Activity is about too, isn't it? You sit and you don't watch it for the plot or the characters. There are these creepy moments and there are pop-out scares, and you're putting yourself through a psychological ordeal. For the purpose of overcoming that ordeal. And I think there has to be, in order for that to work, it has to be something very extreme. Paranormal Activity takes a certain route, and I'm not a fan of those films. I think they're pretty shitty. Other horror films take other routes. But there's something valuable in the element of what I'm calling the joust between the viewer and the film. And that's something that I think is lost in this. I think there's a tendency to watch horror movies in this in the contemporary era, where we make fun of the film, and we talk through the film, and like, oh, wasn't that funny, or like, oh, we're scared, ha 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 ha. And there's this affirmation of community when people watch horror films, and this to me is a way of disengaging from the actual project. It's a way of de-traumatizing the experience. And there are certainly films that are built around that principle. Don't get me wrong, but I think that it's inappropriate in the setting of a true horror film. The setting of a film that's meant to scare the bejesus out of you. I think it's inappropriate to alienate yourself from that experience in that way. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the joust of horror films, and a sort of slight defense of torture porn, which people don't like. People sort of talk down about that experience, but I think that those people need to again watch Martyrs or watch Antichrist. Those are great films that involve very in-depth characterization and still have this torture dimension of putting you through a radical and extreme experience. Um, in particular, Martyrs, I think, well, both of them, but in particular, Martyrs, I think that's the, like, very overtly the point of the film. And it's sort of mirrored within the film itself. Um, so yeah, that is my first video on horror. There will be a couple others to follow. Happy Halloween. I hope you're something really scary. I hope you get to watch some horror films and, you know, have a good day.